All right, I got it 8 o'clock, and so we'll get started. We know you all have a busy day ahead of you. I'm Jeff Ray. I'm the president and CEO of the Southland Regional Chamber. Thank you for joining us for our monthly member briefing. We've been trying to do these just to kind of keep you connected with the different things that are happening here in the chamber and in the community. We want these to be informative, and we'd love for it to be interactive. So use your chat function if you have some questions, and we'll do our best to navigate through that. As we get started, I like to welcome our sponsor, Center for Hospice in Mishawaka. Craig Harrell is joining us for Center for Hospice. We can't do the great programming we do at the Chamber without partners. Hospice is obviously one of those terrific partners that you've become accustomed to having with us on a member briefing. And many of you joined us even this past week or so as we were out at Hospice for our networking at lunch. And so Craig, you and your team were a terrific host out there. We had a terrific turnout. And let me just turn over to you for a quick welcome this morning.
Well, I appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you very much. Yeah, we did get a chance to host last week, and it was fun to see everybody out there and get to talk to some of the people. You know, as an organization, Center for Hospice Care, we're actually celebrating our 41st year. And in over that 41 years, we've served over 42,000 patients and families in our community, which is pretty impressive. It was interesting, though, during one of my conversations I had with one of the attendees, I shared with him that even though we're the original hospice in St. Joseph County, we were actually Hospice of St. Joseph County, we are no longer the exclusive. And because we maybe are the most prominent, people tend to think of us, but we actually have 31 competitors in our 9-county service area, which was amazing to him. But one of the things that sets us apart is that we are not for profit. Many of the other hospices in the area are for profit. They're based out of state, and consequently, they don't have the involvement in the community and the investment that we do. One of the things we're very proud of over those 41 years, we have never turned anybody away based on their inability to pay, or their ability to pay. And what that amounts to just in this past year is that we had $2.3 million in the unreimbursed services and over $10 million in the past 5 years. So that just gives you an example of our investment back into the community, whether it be direct patient care or whether it be bereavement services, which has really become one of our strong points. We actually offer services to anybody in the community, whether they were one of our patient families or not, that are struggling with the death or the loss of a loved one. So that we just want to make sure that people are aware of that they have those resources available to them to take advantage of, and we encourage that. But we obviously are very passionate about community organizations, and the chamber is definitely one of those items that we're passionate about. So thank you, Jeff, for the opportunity to give my 2-minute spiel here.
Craig, thanks so much, and appreciate the chance to have you with us today. If you haven't had a chance to visit Hospice, Craig or any of the team over there, I'm sure would be happy to give you a tour of the phenomenal facilities that they have built here in our community, and they do some phenomenal work, and many of you have shared great experiences. So thank you, Craig, for joining us today for that. I would like to, as we're getting started today, just give you a couple updates. One, let me hold on 1 second. I got a little music going. If you're on, if maybe just for ease of, if you could place yourself on mute, I may mute a few of you. All right, still hearing music there. Sorry about that. All right. So we'll get going here. My apologies. Want to remind you a couple things going on. Much like the Center for Hospice sponsors, that your business has an opportunity to team up with the Chamber on a variety of things. And so encourage you to think about that. Feel free to reach out to Sherry Carroll or myself to talk a little bit about what those sponsorship opportunities could look like here if you want to team up and think about how you can co-brand your company with the stuff that we're doing here at the Chamber. I want to get a couple things on your radar, just from a schedule standpoint. We are doing events live and in person, and doing some virtual as well. And so I just want to give you a quick highlight of some of those that you should have on your agenda over the next month. We're going to the zoo next week, Chamber Family Night at the zoo. I do think that might be sold out. Check our website, but I think you may have missed that opportunity if you're not already signed up for that. But we're this week grateful for the zoo on Thursday night, having us out for Chamber Family Night at the zoo. Well over 200 people have signed up to come join us for that. And and like I said, I think you might have missed that. Shoot us an email or something. We could put you on a waiting list potentially there. Next week we have our virtual healthcare summit. We're talking care, costs, and COVID on September 29th, a virtual healthcare summit, teaming up with our local healthcare partners just to talk a little bit more about that. We know health insurance and such is one of your biggest expenses in your business, and so we want to dive a little bit deeper into those issues. So South Bend Clinic and Beacon will be and Gibson, some of our principal presenters. Got a couple great panels there. We think you'll enjoy that. So September 29th at 8 in the morning. October 7th, a business after hours on the Gridiron at Gillespie Field. If you've come off the toll road interchange there at exit 77, you've seen the new soccer field there behind Gillespie, and the Inn at St. Mary's. We'll be out there for a little business after hours, October 7th from 4 to 6. October 20th, we're doing a state of the schools, so from 8 to 9:30 on October 20th. So some great conversation confirmed are Dr. Jerry Thacker, Todd Cummings, and Wayne Barker. So the superintendents of the 3 largest school districts in the community will be joining us October 20th in person at the Patel Center in Mishawaka from 8 to 9:30. So if you have an interest in education, come join us October 20th, and we'll look forward to just kind of giving you some insight in that. Obviously, what happens in our education system has a direct impact on each of your businesses, and we want you to know a little bit more about the state of our schools and kind of what's happening there. On November 4th, we'll do our State of the Economy. That's an annual event where we invite some of our elected leaders. Mayor Wood, Mayor Mueller, Commissioner Castellani, Regina Emberton from the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership will be joining us that day for a little update on the economy and kind of what's going on. Just encourage you to visit our website, check our events calendar, several of the ribbon cuttings, member events that are posted there as well too. We've got a busy schedule. Obviously, we're doing our best to maintain COVID protocols throughout. We may shift some of those to virtual if it's necessary, and for now we're planning on many of those though being in person, and so we encourage you to come join us for some of that. So I got several things I want to touch on today. We've talked a lot in these sessions before about COVID. We're not going to spend the whole time today talking about COVID, but there are a couple important updates that we want to make sure businesses are tuned into. So I've invited our longtime friend Michael Palmer to join us. Michael is a partner at Barnes and Thornburg. They've been a terrific partner for the chamber for many years, and Michael is a expert in labor and employment, kind of law. And so I asked Michael maybe just to come and spend a couple minutes with us, just kind of giving us a little bit of an update on some of the things that are happening in that space now. And so, Michael, thank you for joining us this morning. So maybe I'll get right into it, Michael. Let's talk Delta variant for a second. Kind of, we were hoping we were past the worst of the coronavirus. The Delta variant is kicking back up. Talk a little bit for a second about the impact of the Delta variant.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today. And like most businesses, Barnes and Thornburg has been struggling with this as well for more than a year and a half now, and I know that this has been frustrating. And really, the Delta variant was a game changer. If you think back in May, CDC and OSHA had changed its guidance, allowing businesses to distinguish between vaccinated and unvaccinated employees, allowing vaccinated employees to take off their masks while they're indoors, allow them to not socially distance at work, allow them basically to go back to life as normal, or what was normal. And that shifted as a result of the Delta variant. Delta variant is far more contagious than the previous variants, and it's also able to be transmitted by vaccinated individuals. Because of those two issues, it's contagiousness and that it can be transmitted by vaccinated individuals, CDC and OSHA changed its guidance and required companies, employers to mandate that their employees continue to wear masks indoors when they're in areas of high or substantial transmission. And that's virtually all of the United States right now. And so a key takeaway for employers is to recognize that what we've been doing for the past year and a half, we have to continue doing, which is have a COVID team, have a COVID coordinator, have a COVID plan, and on a regular basis, a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, review the guidance, update your plan in accordance with that guidance, and communicate that plan to your employees so they know what your requirements are. CDC and OSHA also changed its guidance regarding who has to quarantine. You're still allowed to distinguish between vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals, but there are steps that you should take even when a vaccinated person comes in close contact with COVID. That is different than it was in the summer. Now you're expected to have them test 3 to 5 days after that exposure and continue to wear a mask for 14 days after that. So key takeaway is we're not out of the woods. We have to keep revisiting our plans. And the Delta variant has also kind of led to a movement for employers to consider mandating vaccines. So that's a pretty big topic recently as well.
So thanks, Michael, for the update. Let's talk about mandates for a second. Just maybe 2 weeks ago, handful of employers in contact with me contemplating mandating the vaccine within their workforce, concerned that an outbreak of COVID could shut down their line, could mean they can't get their product to their customers, and so they were contemplating it. What kind of guidance or advice, or can employers even contemplate, or can they mandate the virus or the vaccine?
Yeah, great question. So yes, employers can mandate the vaccine. It's pretty clear that that's the state of the law. We were concerned as employers that the emergency use authorization status of some of the vaccines might limit our ability to mandate it. But Department of Justice, as well as some courts, have come out and said, no, that EUA status doesn't infringe on an employer's right to mandate a vaccine of its employees. There are some legal requirements that you need to keep in mind. The EEOC has said you're allowed to mandate the vaccine as long as you do so while meeting your Title VII obligations and your ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act obligations. And basically what that means is that you need to have a reasonable accommodation process in place so that if an employee cannot receive the vaccine because of his or her sincerely held religious beliefs, that you have an accommodation process for them. It also means that under the ADA, if an employee is disabled such that he or she can't receive the vaccine, that you have an accommodation process in place to figure out what sort of accommodation would allow them to continue safely working in your workplace. There are other legal issues, wage payment issues with regard to whether or not you have to pay your employee if you're mandating the vaccine. Most likely the answer is yes. There may be collective bargaining obligations if you're a unionized employer, that if you're going to mandate the vaccine, you have to comply with those obligations. But the big issues are the accommodation issue under Title VII and under the ADA, as well as maintaining the confidentiality of an employee's vaccination status under the ADA.
Great. Obviously some complicated stuff, and appreciate your sharing some insight, with us here. So was it now a couple weeks ago, President Biden decided that to mandate vaccines for larger employers. Can you talk a little bit about, so should our large employers today be getting that scheduled? What's the maybe process or for that? How should a larger employer be thinking about complying with that mandate?
Yeah, and first, let me just clarify a couple things. One is that there's no mandate right now for employers of 100 or more employees. There's been a lot of news coverage of that that announcement by President Biden, and I think there is a perception by some larger employers that there has been a mandate. Basically, what President Biden did was instruct OSHA to implement an emergency rule, an emergency temporary standard that would mandate employers have a policy that requires employees to be vaccinated or to have additional safety precautions, such as and including a regular testing regimen for those who don't get vaccinated. So that hasn't happened yet. There's no requirement yet. We do expect within the next few weeks, OSHA will issue that emergency standard and answer all the questions that employers have right now related to that, announcement. How are you going to calculate 100 employees? Who's going to pay for the testing? Will you have to pay for your employees to take time off to get the vaccine? These are all questions that are open that we expect to get guidance from OSHA within the next few weeks. Federal contractors, most federal contractors are required to mandate the vaccine because President Biden implemented an executive order mandating most federal contractors mandate the vaccine. And that's a true mandate. There's no testing option, at least as we understand it. We don't have all the details about that either. September 24th, we expect the COVID task force to give us the guidance regarding what specifically which federal contractors are covered and what are they required to do in order to comply with the executive order. Executive order also, there was one that was directed at healthcare and those entities receiving Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, requiring them also to mandate a vaccine. So federal contractors, federal employees, and medical employers will likely be required to mandate the vaccine. Private employers of 100 or more will likely have a policy that provides a choice, mandate the vaccine, or provide a testing option. So employees will have that choice. In terms of what you should be doing now is that basically I think employers should begin to plan for this. We know enough to know that this is coming. There will be legal challenges. Some of these orders or the OSHA's standard when it's implemented may be enjoined, but I think you should begin to plan, especially if you have a union, begin to talk about this topic coming down the line so that you can begin to negotiate with the union if you need to. Try to figure out, begin to draft your policy. What are you going to do with regard to testing? What are you going to pay for? What are you going to not pay for? Begin to think through those issues. Consider the morale issues. This is a very polarizing topic. And so, I think you want to begin to work on your communication that you're going to have to your employees and your tracking process. How are you going to establish who's vaccinated and who's not? And how are you going to keep track of that information in a confidential way? Again, a lot of this is unknown. We expect to know much more within the coming weeks, but employers should begin to plan for that.
Great. Thank Michael. Just as I'm thinking about that, so Friday we find out more. Likely, the federal government issues some guidance. Employers then would typically have a period of time to comply. So talk about what might happen. From a timing standpoint after, maybe just ask for you, look in your crystal ball and speculate a little bit. And then also how, because of the thought of these legal challenges, how an employer should approach that, right? Don't count on, should they count on it being held up in the courts at some time, or is the better practice to sort of get ready for it? Just talk about that timing and the legal piece.
Okay, from a timing perspective, if you're a federal contractor, Friday is the important date because that's when the government will issue its or the deadline for it to give us the guidance from the task force about what's required of you. That will begin to be implemented in October. So you would expect to see it's going to be implemented October 15th. So you would expect to see that contracts that are being negotiated to begin after October 15th, and certainly those that will be implemented after October 15th, will have a provision in them that establishes what you're required to do as a federal contractor, i.e. mandate the vaccine. It's less likely that that requirement will be enjoined, although we would still expect legal challenges. For private employers of 100 or more employees, we don't really know when we're going to get the emergency standard. We expect it within 6 to 8 weeks from the announcement. So end of September to mid to late October, we would expect to get that. And then we would also expect, a 30 to 45 day grace period for private employers to comply with whatever OSHA's emergency standard is. So you do have time to plan, but to your question, Jeff, it's better to plan than to expect for there to be an injunction. I can say for those employers that are pulling for an injunction, emergency temporary standards historically have been enjoined. There's been, I think, 8 to 10 of them historically. There hasn't been one since the 70s, or no, from the 80s. And frequently they are enjoined either completely or partially because OSHA has to establish certain standards in order to make use of that process.
Great. Michael, you touched briefly on the religious exemptions, and we've kind of seen the rise in that. Any advice to employers as they're working on or trying to figure out how to deal with that?
Yeah, this is a really important topic. It's in an area where a lot of employers don't have experience because most of us don't encounter religious accommodation requests from our employees. Sometimes you do, based on days of religious services or garments that employees wear, but nothing like what you can expect to happen when you mandate a vaccine. So what you should begin to do is, number one, as you're preparing the documents you need to manage your vaccine policy, one of those documents should be an accommodation form, a form to use for medical accommodations and a form to use for religious accommodations. And, so a lot of you probably have experience managing an accommodation request under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And you know that there's a process we can use to go to the employee's doctor to confirm that the employee is disabled, meets the definition of disability under the ADA, and that disability necessitates an accommodation. So let's say employee has a leg injury that's a disability that necessitates a chair for use as an accommodation in the workplace. What's different about the religious accommodation situation is that an employee is only entitled to religious accommodation if he or she can't receive the vaccine based on, quote unquote, a sincerely held religious belief. We don't have a really good process for determining what is a sincere belief and what is a religious belief. We can't require them to go to their pastor or their religious leader to validate that they have a sincerely held belief, because religious beliefs are personal. And the EEOC recognizes that a personal religious belief, even if it differs from your religion, can meet the standard. And so what we're recommending employers do is not necessarily concede that point. You should have a form that asks questions to probe whether or not a belief is sincere and religious when you have a reason to believe that, or a reason to doubt the sincerity or the religiosity of that belief. EEOC says, unless you have objective evidence that causes you to doubt sincerity or the religious nature of the belief, accept it. But if you have objective evidence to create a doubt, then you can question it. And so I've been dealing with this a lot over the last few weeks. And some examples of what causes doubt are when a person's belief differs from their religion. So for example, the Pope has come out and said it's morally acceptable for Catholics to receive the vaccine. If a Catholic claims that he can't or she can't receive the vaccine because of a religious belief, the fact that it differs from the religious leader can create some objective evidence that calls into question the sincerity of that belief. Or if you know the employee has taken other vaccines that, so one of the big religious reasons that folks are objecting is because some of the vaccines are made from fetal cells from fetuses that were aborted in the 70s and the 80s. And it's a pro-life religious objection. But if they've taken other vaccines or other medicines that derive from those fetal cells, that would also call into question the sincerity of that belief. So for example, Tylenol and other common medicines derive from testing done through fetal cells. And so there's all sorts of questions that you can ask your employees to determine whether or not their belief is sincere. I've seen a lot of employers encounter letters seeking a religious accommodation that come directly from a website. So it's a verbatim letter from a website that your employee purchased this letter. The fact that they're purchasing a letter that some of which probably doesn't apply to your organization calls into question the sincerity of their belief. The other part of this, and sorry to go on, Jeff, is that you don't have to provide a religious accommodation if it would cause you an undue burden. And the standard of undue burden is lesser than the standard in the context of a disability request. And really, you only have to establish that providing the religious accommodation would cause a de minimis expense to your organization. And that expense can come through financial expense or operational expense or safety expense. So long-winded answer to your simple question, Jeff, but it's a relatively complicated analysis.
It sure is, and thank you for helping to shed some light on that. And I think this is very helpful to employers. And we're not going to talk the whole time about COVID, I promise, folks. I know this is complicated sometimes because I think we're all tired of hearing about it, but it's all still very realistic in our daily practices. So it's great to have these conversations. Michael, a question in the chat about whether you've heard of any possibility that students wanting to secure federal financial aid may be required to be vaccinated in the future.
I suspect the answer is going to be no. I have not heard of that. In fact, the federal contractor rule, that executive order, excludes grants from covered federal contractors. In other words, school that receives a grant isn't going to be considered a federal contractor simply because of that grant. So short answer, no, I haven't heard of that.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. One last one, just so, Michael, we've touched on a lot of different things. Any just last advice to before we move on to employers as they're thinking about just sort of continuing to navigate coronavirus, Delta variant, vaccines, kind of all that's going on right now?
Yeah, big picture, stay vigilant. This is, I empathize. We're all exhausted. We're all tired of talking about COVID, but you need to keep your teams in place, monitor the guidance, update your plan. The big issues you should be considering are, what do we want to do from a vaccine perspective? Do we want to incentivize it? Do we want to mandate it? Do we want to offer the choice between vaccine and a testing protocol? Do we have a choice? Are we an organization that has to do one of those things? And then, that decision is going to drive what you should be doing from an accommodation standpoint. Not only have the forms you need to manage that accommodation process, but also train the people that need to be trained to help you manage it. So your HR team, as well as your supervisors. And then finally, just again, recognize this is a polarizing topic. Like masks, vaccines are something that your employees are going to care about. And so you just want to be thoughtful about how you roll out whatever your policy is going to be, recognizing that it's going to probably upset half of your employees and half of your employees are going to like it, and how you navigate that in a respectful way so that everybody feels welcome in the workplace.
Great. He's Michael Palmer. He's one of the best in the employment and labor practices here in our market. He's also been a great friend of the chamber. We're grateful, Michael, for your time this morning, as well as the great partnership that we have with Barnes and Thornburg. I appreciate you helping shed some insight in today on COVID-related issues.
You're welcome, Jeff. Thank you for all you do.
Great. Thanks. We're going to shift gears, do a quick, I don't know if a 180, but I'm going to tap Rob DeClean real quick. Rob's our executive vice president here at the chamber. Rob runs Visit South Bend, Mishawaka. Rob, you get the beauty of following the kind of the tough conversation, but let's talk a little bit for a second about football season. So this is unlike what happened last year. Visitors are back in town. We've been home twice for a game so far. Give us a little snapshot on what's going on the travel tourism side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. And it is indeed a 180, but happy to play that role this morning. But Mike, that was awesome information. So yeah, fall is all about Notre Dame football. You know, a lot of people just associate tourism in South Bend with Notre Dame football. Of course, it is so much more, but football is absolutely the marquee event that we get to host every year and really showcase the community. So we have had 2 home football games. I have data from the first, which was Toledo, and it's actually very good news. So if you were watching on Peacock, you might have seen some empty seats. I was in the stadium. There definitely were some empty seats. But I'm pleased to say that countywide, we achieved 80% hotel occupancy for both Friday and Saturday night. And that's actually quite good, quite typical for maybe a lesser opponent. I'm nothing against Toledo, but I mean, it doesn't just have the draw of a Southern Cal or a Stanford or some of these other bigger names. But so for a home opener against Toledo, we achieved 80%. It allowed us to beat national numbers for that week from a weekly average occupancy. So we're off and running. And then I will get the Purdue data tomorrow. So every Wednesday I get the report. And I'm expecting it to be significantly different. A lot of people think some of these closer in opponents don't necessarily impact us because they can drive in and day trip. And while that's true for a lot of the fans, it's also true that they kind of like to come in and soak up the experience because they get so many of their fans here for the weekend, and then they get to have a good time. So we'll get Purdue's impact tomorrow, expecting it to be a little bit better because obviously the stadium was full. And I think I even just noticed it around the community, whether I was on my way to the game on Saturday morning or out Friday night. The town was abuzz this past weekend. So it's great to have football back.
Rob, if folks maybe haven't been out to the stadium for a while, or maybe they have visitors in town seeking to experiences, where would they get the information about, kind of what's happening on a game day weekend that they should plug folks into?
Sure. Well, I'll give you 2 sources. One, we always plug our friends at gameday.nd.edu. That's sort of a dedicated website for all things Notre Dame football to ensure that fans can experience all the things that they really need to experience. But also we do a pretty good job on our website as well, visit southbend.com, of navigating you towards some of the community experiences. So we love you to come and experience all things on campus. That's absolutely what it's all about on the football weekend. But it also gives you a chance to come and check out the community and, grab dinner downtown or in North Mishawaka or downtown Mishawaka, you name it. Really get to know the community while you're here, because so many of our fans also are return visitors. There's a lot of fans that we have that, hit 1 game a year. But we also have our bucket list fans. So for any of those fans, we want them, again, enjoy everything on campus, gameday.nd.edu. But we work very closely with UND.com, which is the athletics arm of the university, to showcase then the community. We look at it as very much a sort of a carrot and stick situation. So the carrot might be you're coming to town for a football game, but that gives us the opportunity to showcase everything else that you can do. And again, whether that's hitting some of our most favorite restaurants or unique shops or galleries or boutiques or nightlife, you name it. We really work hand in hand with the university on that. And I'm happy to say, just really quick plug, August 26th, we launched a brand new website. So a brand new visit southbend.com. We're really excited about it. It took about 11 months to develop. And it was something that we very deliberately entered into during the pandemic. We had some downtime. And so we made sure we took advantage of the time to shore up our digital presence, because so much of what we do these days relative to paid advertising and paid marketing and promotion is all digital. It all leads to that website. QR codes are back. I know everybody's seeing them everywhere in this age of COVID and the pandemic. Use your smartphone, whether it's at a restaurant to get to a menu or anything, you're seeing QR codes everywhere. So we're aware that more people than ever are going to our website. We're very, very pleased to say it's our best website ever. So please check it out. We're still tweaking some things. Just launched about 3 weeks ago. So let us know if you see some things that you'd like to see on there. But in general, we'd love for you just to check out, visit southbend.com and let us know what you think.
Thanks, Rob. I was on ESPN's website last night. They have a new, I don't know, bracketed challenge trying to figure out what the best college game day experience is, and they unfortunately left out South Bend. They forgot about the great experiences that we have here, and which surprised me, given that our experience versus I think other communities. I think nobody does it better than South Bend and Notre Dame, and just maybe a slight oversight by ESPN. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to watch.
I couldn't agree more. I saw that story this weekend and scrolled through and just sort of left it because I couldn't believe we were left out. Because I will tell you, it's so great to have football back. South Bend on game day, whether you're on campus, whether you're out in the community, I call it South Bend at its best. So it's so great to have it back.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Rob, for those updates. Appreciate that. I'm going to shift. Kate, I think you were on as well. I hope you're still on there. Kate Lee from our team. Kate is leading many of our workforce efforts and has Manufacturing Day coming up here in the next week or two. So, Kate, can you give us a quick update on what we should know about that?
Sure. Manufacturing Days planning and getting ready is underway. It's the kind of the reboot of our Manufacturing Days landing page from last year. So as many of you may remember, everything went digital last year and it's still kind of there. So we're sticking with that. Most schools are not even able to go out on field trips right now, and most businesses aren't ready to take people in for field trips. So we are going to build on the success of last year's Manufacturing Days, the virtual version. We had over 10,000 views to that landing page last year, and we're looking forward to having even more. We have more educators engaged. We've had 2 information sessions for educators. We've had 30 plus educators attend those. We have employers coming in, signing up for the business directory, which is great. There are lots of other opportunities for manufacturing employers to engage. There's the being listed in the business directory is kind of the baseline. You can do that, and all the things are available under the talent tab on the chamber landing page. I can drop it in the chat. So you can be listed in the business directory, where you can include a video, jobs that you have open, and just tell a little bit about your company. So students and educators and parents can find their way there, as well as adult job seekers. There are other opportunities to speak during the last couple of weeks of October. We'll be doing industry chats. So that's another opportunity for manufacturing employers. We're extending it because it is virtual. There's this actual kind of upside to that, where hopefully further on in the school year, we'll be able to do some live tours. So we want to know which manufacturers who'd be willing to do that, but also offer the opportunity for conversations with classrooms throughout the school year. So if you're a business who might want to participate in the directory and also be a part of one of the industry chats the last 2 weeks of October, but you're like, there could be other times I'd want to speak to students throughout the year. You can let us know that through that form. And you can connect with students virtually or live if you're comfortable with that. So lots of options, kind of curating almost a speakers bureau around manufacturing careers to be available and do some matchmaking with classes that make sense. So we're super excited about that, and I'm certainly not doing it alone. Allison Herzig on our team is a huge help, as well as our crack marketing team of Sherry and Amanda, who make it really pretty on the landing page. So we'll have some new videos through the Lift industry videos outlining student pathways. These will be people who work in local companies who got their training and education here at local colleges and universities. So we're excited about that as well. Trying to think if I've forgotten anything. But everything kicks off October 1st, which is Manufacturing Day. So the landing page, the 2021 landing page, will launch on that day with lots of new resources, lots of opportunities to learn. And we're hoping to break last year's record of 10,000 page views. We have some great sponsors. Ivy Tech is on board again as our major sponsor. They do the heavy lifting on educating so many in our community who work in manufacturing, not just for their first job, but also the continuing ed that takes them to their next job. So we really appreciate that. Centier Bank is also a sponsor of this year's event. So excited to be moving forward with that. We also, just a quick update, we did an event on Friday at Tire Rack. The Tire Rack HR people were looking kind of for a creative way to get the word out on different jobs. They have 3 different companies under their umbrella, and they have some really great entry-level opportunities. So we worked with Ivy Tech and sat down with them and talked about other ways we could do this. Like, what could we do besides have students come out and go directly to the students? So we decided to try something kind of new, and we took 23 educators, multiple high schools, from Ivy Tech, I have a list somewhere, Goodwill, Work One, to go really see a Tire Rack and learn about all the different job opportunities they have, with the premise that they'll be able to go back and talk to their students and really know which kids might really want as a first job to, maybe even in high school, work in the warehouse section or move the tires. Kids who just are really, they're gearheads, they really like cars, and they might really find that intriguing. So they can have really meaningful conversations with the students and adults that they serve, and there are people who are looking for jobs or maybe just their next step. And it was a great success. Tire Rack did a great job of hosting. I will say the test track made me a little nauseous. They drive really fast and spin those cars around, but I did make it. So that I was happy about that. And I would recommend, if you're a large employer or even a mid-sized employer who would be interested in getting kind of HR fingers out in the community, educating our educators on what you do, and our career counselors and the people who are really working closely with students to help them find their next step, can be a really great way to do that. And we'd be happy to help you do that. So it was really great. And we're going to do a survey of the educators, and I'm really anxious to hear what their feedback will be. It was a great event. They did a great job. So thanks,
Great.
Jeff.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kate. We hear what you're telling us, you employers, about those challenges on the workforce side, and we're trying to meet those needs. The manufacturing space has been one of our more successful ones, but we do a lot of different things, as Kate mentioned there. So if you're not plugged in, feel free to reach out to Kate or Allison from our team, who are playing in that space and trying to bring creative solutions to your challenges of finding that top talent. And we're super focused on trying to make sure that next generation of talent understands the paths and those opportunities that are available. And so I just encourage you to plug in there. I want to just give you a quick economic development update. Some pretty exciting projects happening in and around town. For example, on Friday, we were out at Unifrax in New Carlisle. Unifrax is this was their first site. They now have 60 sites in 30 different countries. They do $2 billion in sales and employ several thousand people, but they all started here in St. Joe County many years ago, and their next expansion will be here as well. They're moving into the battery technology space. It was kind of fun to connect with the CEO on Friday and hear a little bit about what the future might look like for each of us on the battery technology. Imagine, charging your cell phone and it lasting for a whole week before you had to charge it again, or your iPhone and it lasting for a couple of weeks, or your car being able to go a greater distance when you charge your electric car and stuff. So new battery technology. Unifrax plans to be the leader in that space, and is working with all the major manufacturers. They're using silica rather than lithium, I believe, is I'm beyond my science capability there, but pretty exciting to see a nice expansion in a plant that's been a really good employer here for the last 50 years. Electric last mile continues to move forward on the former H2 plant. That's a pretty exciting rollout of a new vehicle to be produced here. Clay's Candy starting to come out of the ground up on NIMPS Parkway up there. So we'll watch for that from the bypass or from NIMPS as Clay's is in about their 101st or 102nd year, I think, in business here, but doing a brand new state-of-the-art facility out on South Bend's northwest side. Some other activity on the northwest side, just with kind of that Dillon Drive continues to be a strong spot. A couple buildings up there. NIMPS with the new Pollywood from last year, and some other opportunities I think you'll see happen on NIMPS and Old Cleveland a little bit later this year. So we're the economic development partner. We help coordinate with the cities, the county, state, everybody, and we're oftentimes those leads come to us first, and we're working to coordinate with which each of those entities opportunities on trying to bring new opportunities here. It's kind of funny to think about that a little bit, bringing new companies here at the same time that that our existing companies are having challenges finding people. But we know that that our economy has to continue to grow, and I'm pretty excited about what we're doing in that that economic development space. We exist principally to do advocacy on your behalf as well. So whether so we're the advocates of the business community with some over 1,000 members that employ 60 or 70,000 people. We're pretty plugged in at what's happening at the federal level. We're watching things like the infrastructure bill and what that might mean here for us and for Indiana with a number of key infrastructure projects. We continue to lobby heavily in Indiana for major improvements on things like US 31, which has been a big priority. Kind of a neat thing. I'll throw it in the chat if I can figure out how to make the chat work. A video of US 31 going north. You know, we think about US 31 going south, but US 31 going north is a pretty important piece. Here's a little video update on what's happening. I think for those of you that travel north and go to I-94 are going to be excited to see the progress that's happening there, and the idea that you're not going to have to get off at Napier. You're going to be able to continue on to I-94 and avoid that, you know, kind of slowdown. And it's made a lot of progress this last year. It's an important project for us. We're watching the General Assembly this week. In particular, last week, as you know, the General Assembly came back into action with redistricting plans. The House set to vote on their maps this week. The Senate set to unveil their maps this week. So we've been watching how that impacts districts, in particular our local districts, and any changes that may happen there. So we're kind of plugged into what's going on there. Some of you know that we also dabble up north of the border a little bit in Niles, and so we run the Niles Chamber. We work real close with the folks in Niles and Buchanan and Bertrand Township and Niles Charter Township up on the north of the state line, an important piece of our economy. Hopefully you saw the good news this week about INDEC and the economic impact of a $1.1 billion economic development project that was 20 years in the making, a state-of-the-art natural gas generating power plant that will begin testing in October and be ready for production in March. But we've had 400 to 600 people in town working on site on that project for some time, similar to what happened at St. Joseph Energy Center out in New Carlisle previously. So pretty exciting project up there in Niles. We have a new staffer in Niles we're ready to announce next week, and so look for that news, and we'll continue to try to drive activity really all across the region. If I'm mentioning region, this is a big critical week for us. We've talked previously about READY. READY is the state's regional economic recovery, kind of program. We are seeking up to a $50 million grant for our area, similar to regional cities, and so a number of partners across the region have been working for the last 3 or 4 months on trying to put a READY plan together. Last week, I saw a 203-page draft of that plan, and some serious refining of that plan ongoing right now, with the plan of making a submission yet next week by the end of September deadline. And so great work by a lot of key regional partners. Important to know, though, that I think folks are really focused on READY projects. What's most important for us first is that we get the grant, and then there will be an opportunity to apply for projects after we've been awarded that. So we have some projects in there with the idea of kind of trying to explain to the state what we have in mind should we get these dollars, but nothing's been set in stone on the award of projects, and that will happen in a process that we anticipate beginning closer to January or February of next year. Our hope, bottom line, is that it turns out similar to regional cities. If you remember regional cities, $42 million, we were able to leverage with and get almost $300 million of new capital investment. So to be able to take that 50 and get a similar capital investment, we think would be really helpful for the region. And so a lot of work happening on those pieces right there. With that, I don't have a lot else other than to, again, remind you to plug the events calendar. Remember, our healthcare summit, our state of the school, state of the economy are really our three big signature events. But we also know that there's great value in getting people just together and connecting. Since we last were together, we hosted our 40 under 40 reception, and oh my gosh, what a terrific crowd that was. It was just I think people were anxious to get back together. Again, we're trying to be careful with COVID protocols and such, but for the most part, we think there's value in life returning to normal, and we're going to try to do all the right things to make sure that we can. And so watch for those business before hours, after hours. I mentioned on October 7th, we'll be at Gillespie. We were at Gillespie for 40 under 40 reception, and that went really well and had a terrific crowd of folks. I'll plug it while I'm there. Think about 40 under 40 for next year. I think it's interesting whenever we do things that draw attention to us. I hear a lot about people that should be recognized that maybe haven't, and so write those names right now on your desk, and remember to help us put together an application or a nomination form for them come time. We have typically 180 to 200 nominations, but we're always looking for the best and the brightest here in our region. We don't want to miss those diamonds in the rough that we might have missed in the past. So be thinking about those in anticipation of that come first of the year. So with that, if no other questions there, I think we'll wrap up for today with another just quick thank you to Center for Hospice, our partners today. Craig, you and the team and everybody over at Hospice, we're grateful for you teaming up with us today, and we will look forward to seeing everybody. Honestly, I don't think we're doing a member briefing next month. I think November we'll be back with the member briefing. Just with the number of other events that we have scheduled in October, we felt like we didn't want to overload your calendar, and so we'll give you some key updates at those other events, and then we'll look forward to another member briefing in November. So thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you again soon, and as always, reach out to us if you got any questions or if there are things that we can do for you. We're here to work on your behalf. So reach out to us, and we'll see what we can do to help you. Everybody, have a great day.